can manipulate the mic with Mitch just looking at me. He's our usual sound man, and he's usually the one that works the mic. But I have learned many things from him. Thank you all for being here. What a treat, what a joy. Thank you. I'm going to start with reading a couple of poems from Phil Parisi. Phil Parisi is in our poetry group, and he did this watercolor, the art, and then Rob created the cover design. And Phil also did the artwork for our last Poetry at 3, and I'm going to read one poem out of that one. But I'll start with two of his poems. I like these two a lot. The first one is Garlic. And planting garlic, being a garlic planter myself, you know, you plant it in the fall, I relate to this poem. Garlic by Phil Parisi. Yesterday I ripped you from the ground, tied you up and hung you in the garage to dry. This morning, when I opened the door, you bowled me over with your thick accent, mugged me with your little pungent knuckles. You screamed your protest in the only language you know, right to the root. Your feisty small fry riot made me chuckle the way we laugh at tiny guard dogs. But you must be tamed. I put you in a box and shut the lid, put you in the garden shed and locked the door, left you in solitary confinement to calm down. In time, you will learn to reserve your powers, redirect your energies for another season in my stew. But I know that in the end, at a delicate moment when my guard is down, your ghost will have the last laugh, your revenge lingering on my breath. Good, huh? And this is called Tellers. And I don't know, you might think of bank tellers or just tellers, but the title is Tellers. And this is by Phil Parisi. By the way, he's at a painting class, a watercolor class, and he's sort of in charge, and so that's why he couldn't come tonight. Tellers. What can I tell the tellers when they ask me how my day is going and whether I have any exciting news for my weekend? How can I say to someone 40 years my junior that I just came down from the mountain, discovered the ecstasy of being alive in an astounding landscape? Do I say I have just dropped down from the sky and landed here stunned and am just now waking up to the reality? I can tell them that I just got off from a hard day's work dragging rotting corpses from the rubble-shelled buildings in Afghanistan to return them to their mothers who are waiting in tears for some news. I can say I've just been shot at from a speeding vehicle, or I can tell them of the endless monotony of being stuck in a toll booth with no change in my pocket as I rush to meet the love of my life before the plane leaves. Would they understand if I said I just painted the best landscape ever, or that I read Shelley's fabulous poem, Hymn to Intellectual Beauty, and understood it? Or do I break down and say, you are wasting your life reciting someone else's script for wages, and you should wake up and jump out of your cage? Finally, I decide to stick to my privacy policy, for I too have been a teller of tales, and say, just fine, thank you. That's Phil Parisi. And this is Star, Coulbrooke, and this is called Chicken Apocalypse, and this has a nod to William Carlos Williams, of course. Chicken Apocalypse. Chickens fan their feathers, fluff and preen, strut their glossy fat, don't ridicule each other's waddles, butt flaps, beady little eyes. Oh chickens, your crowns of bright, your pin feathers, yellow skins, three-toed feet that splay and flap in the barnyard next to the haystack. Chickens asleep in a wooden coop 2 stories high, moon panning down on raccoons in the night with hand-like feet that claw the silence, mayhem in the fat ring tail, thin black fingers, teeth that rip, white chickens alive beside the red. Did you get the William Carlos Williams? This poem is Cooking Before the Frost, and my mentor, Ken Brewer, wrote a poem called Fishing Before the Frost, and I didn't remember it until I wrote my poem Cooking Before the Frost, and then thought, that sounds so familiar, and yep. But the poem isn't anything like his Fishing Before the Frost. I should have brought it, but I didn't. Cooking Before the Frost. It comes with 2 epigraphs. Into the red eye, the cauldron of morning, from Sylvia Plath's Ariel. And red sky at dawning, sailors take warning. That's a folk saying. Some people say red sky at morning, sailors take warning, but in the old days we said dawning, sailors take warning, because it matches better. Ah, not all, ah. Just take note. Rain pours hard as knitting needles down from a black April night, cruelest of spring storms, killing frost on its surly heels. No pity for the apricots. I stir egg yolks and white sugar for lemon pudding, wait for the bubbling thickness to cook into clarity, milky starch glossed to a sheen. We eat with spoons. Rain suddenly stops. We know what this means for tomorrow's prickly fate. Red sky too beautiful for any good to come of it. Bird bath frozen solid. Finches dropped from bitter perches. Blossoms black on every tree that blooms this cursed month. I must use the whites before they spoil, so I beat them, foam to peaks. Add sugar, vinegar, vanilla, sweet, sour, sweet, or the stiffness won't hold when put to heat. Dark clouds roll in again like chocolate folded into egg whites, puffed meringue at the end of baking, bitter, sweet mouthfuls of shadow and air. May Swenson, the most famous poet of Logan, she was totally or should have been the laureate of Logan, but she cheated. She went to New York. And in New York, she became very famous, but her house is still here in Logan, and we still have her poems here in Logan. And I want to read one because I think one of Ben's poems had some wind in it, and we've had a lot of wind in the valley, and so I wanted to read about wind. And this poem by May Swenson and my poem on the same page, May's isn't published in the book, I just taped it in there, is called Cold Colors, and they both have wind. Sweet pea pinks in the winter. This is May Swenson, remember. Sweet pea pinks in the winter. Sun sets through thin, windy branches, dark like snarled string over water's hard, stretched, white, scratched skin. On sky's clear, royal, icy cheek blush, tints of spring. This one is Hawk. This was mine that has some wind. Mid-blizzard, finches fight for seeds and suet, sparring, kicking, feathery tornadoes at each other's throats. Wind pastes gluey snow on hawthorn branches, feeders camouflaged by yellow leaves still holding on. Hawk swoops from blue spruce, knocks the little birds apart, flashes its wings, whips back to the treetops. No birds return until nearly sundown, crowding together in rows, tiny comrades, feathers blown backward. Let me tell you that the poetry group is such a wonderful revision tool. Y'all are my muses when it comes to revision. Sometimes I get really pissed off at them. I think there is no way I can, but you know, feathers blown back. They gave me that, feathers blown backward. It was much prosier before. You wouldn't have liked it as much. And Brock read a Mitch poem, and I'm going to read a Mitch poem or two. But first I'll read Suncatcher, and then I'll read 2 Mitch poems. Suncatcher. The theme of my poems in this book is probably Birds in Glass. We each had 4 or 5 pages in this book, and mine turned out to be Birds in Glass. Suncatcher. Glass panels gently tap the window pane in blue, red, yellow, orange, fishing lined together, diamond shapes and beads between. They bounce on gusts of wind blown down from snow-topped mountains east of town. Brilliant crafter who thought to throw the sun against an inner wall as wind's relentless mangle sets its geometrics tapping, stops the breath, the death of birds, stops the death of birds who in their nesting season try to fly inside what's mirrored. Now they veer instead, no more crashing into glass reflecting what's outside, not in. Suncatcher, hung to tap the golden light and flash its colors like an ambulance, a therapy, colored glass in a stiff breeze. And here, from last poetry at 3 Chapbook is Harvest. I'd like to read this one. This is the first of the 2 Mitch poems, and then I will sit down. Harvest. On the kitchen counter, jars of pickles, dill with peppers, peppers with vegetables suspended in vinegar, sharp tang masking barely the smell of cod fillets broiled for dinner. Husband is yearning for longer life, his cancer returning. Wife lets him help with the canning. He stirs fat peppers, snapping and smoking in the pan, a slick of canola oil, skins pierced, juice burning his eyes. She cuts long strips of carrot, red bell peppers. She peels onions, he peels garlic. They stand side by side, industrious after dark, holding the news inside, each thought a texture of its own, the color of future. Whose life will be set aside first? His with its bright, varied snap, or hers, its vinegared spark? Who's to say which will be preserved and which will be tossed, like the skins and gratings of all they've peeled back, brightest colors pressed into jars, shelved, shining. Last poem, Repurpose. To retire on disability is to admit the stage 4 cancer, so he gives away his Boy Scout Jamboree collection, gives away his drywall tools, marbles, clothes he'll never wear again, but not his bandsaw and gouges, acrylics and brushes, not the glass he finds in the garden, broken bottles, shattered dishes glinting in the soil, polished like the sea. He plans next year's planting, builds climbing beam structures from cattle fencing and metal stakes, tacks 1x2s at the edges where sharp points snag his shirt sleeves. Glass and rock and purslane strew the ground where he pounds the posts. He imagines a shop where his glass will inlay the grips of walking sticks, where his carvings will bring exorbitant fees if he gives away coffee, shade-grown, bird-friendly. He'll have a ceramics guild, an art gallery, a bookshop. He'll crush glass in a contraption he invents and make $1 million. He'll mix Italian sodas in his biker bar. In his church of blues, he'll play guitar, serve greens from his garden, kaleidoscopes placed at the tables, turning his mosaics. And there is free coffee in the back, shade-grown, bird-friendly Helicon.